yesterday we were kind of wondering, I mean, it was even an uncertainty, like, if storms were really going to pop. Well, at this point, we're pretty confident storms are going to pop up this afternoon, which is why if you saw my earlier post, slight risk for severe weather, looks good. The good news is the tornado threat has still stayed pretty low, and a lot of that's because lower level moisture just isn't there, especially after this morning's thunderstorms as we work further east. So that's good news. Now, it doesn't mean that there's zero tornado threat, but it does mean that it's significantly lower than it could be if we had a lot of surface moisture. So that's some of the really good news. That also, the lack of surface moisture also leads to a lack of instability. And we need unstable air to keep thunderstorms going and strengthen. The confidence is that storms are going to form on a dry line in the western portions of Texoma and then push off to the east. So off top here, when you're asking me for locations, today's not a day to ask about a certain location because really, with how it's set up, I would say everyone has a pretty equal chance at a storm. That's just kind of how it goes this afternoon. It's going to be hit and miss. Not everyone's going to see a thunderstorm. It does look like more convection quite a bit than yesterday, meaning more thunderstorms. So that's going to be the main thing that we watch here. I'll go ahead and show you the outlook. I pulled it up. The reason I'm sitting here is because I actually have a desktop computer that I use right here that I can remote into the station. And so you can see, here's our risk for today. Most of the areas in that slight risk. The marginal risk areas, you still have a good chance for a thunderstorm, but the thing is that the storms are really going to form a little bit further off to the west on a dry line, and then they're going to push off to the east, and they probably won't have enough time to strengthen too much here as they work into our western counties, but as they push off to the east, that gives them more time to really get going, and that's why the risk is a little bit higher further off to the east. I'll also show you the tornado risk. The tornado risk is just about the same. It's very low across all of Texoma. Very low does not mean that there's zero chance. It just means that a lot of times we see very low across the entire area. A lot of times we might get a warning in some spots. So it means you want to be weather aware this afternoon, but the slightly higher risk, which is still on the low end, is further off to the north across more of western and into central Oklahoma. So that's good news for us because we're really have questionable surface moisture here as we go into this evening. Now, as I bring it back down to my regular, oh, I flipped it around on me. Hello again. Let's go ahead and look back at this. So, I like to give the brief overview. Like National Weather Service and NORAD posts really good graphics on their website. So, here's the risk. Tornado potential is low, but that's not zero, so we got to watch for that. Today, so golf ball sized hail. This is the kind of interesting thing about today, and also the 60 to 80 mile per hour wind gust. That almost is more likely in some spots than others, especially in the southeastern portions of Texoma. I'll talk more about that in a second. But the golf ball size hail. Today is a day where we'll probably have some fairly strong mesocyclones, but the thing about thunderstorms and building really large hail is you want a really tall thunderstorm. And with a really tall thunderstorm, you have to have a lot of instability to push it all the way through to the tops of the troposphere. And today, with the lack of instability, we probably won't get updraft strong enough to really push it to the top of the atmosphere. So hail is probably going to be pretty prominent today, but as far as getting like baseball-sized hail, that's unlikely. So that's some of the good news. But golf ball-sized hail is still going to put a lot of dents in your car. So keep that in mind too. You definitely want to make sure you're securing your items here as storms start to roll through. And yeah, I'm already seeing people talk about the winds. We were talking about that yesterday. That was the certainty in the forecast today. Strong winds, 100%. That was going to happen as we went throughout this afternoon. And now it looks a little bit more likely for the storm chances. So let's talk about this timing. And then once again, tornado potential is higher further off to the north. That's good news for us, except for Comanche County. You are barely in that low area. So, and there have been occasional models that brought some stronger storms through Comanche County. So we'll watch for that too as we go throughout this evening. Now here's the timing. In that first area, this first layer, as early as 3 o'clock. And we'll go through the forecast model in a second. I'll run you all through it. And then 4 to 7 is most likely. That's really when we have the best chance to start seeing severe storms after 4 o'clock. And then as we work towards the central portion of the Texoma, it gets closer to that, you know, in the Wichita Falls area, north and south, or really northeast and southwest, is going to be closer to about I'd say 5 to 7 o'clock in that range, probably closer to 6. That's why I put an hour before and after that time frame. And then further off to the east, there's actually probably a couple times that we could see storms in the southeastern portions of Texoma. I know Montague, Jack Young, and Throckmorton, you're not included in this graphic because you're not a part of the Norman Forecast Office. But don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. You're also going to see chances for storms more likely after about 9 o'clock, possibly as early as 8, and then probably wrapping up by about midnight. Another thing I want to note, lead time on storms today. You'll probably have some pretty big warnings to give lead time, but storm motion today is going to be fast. Northeast at 50 to 60 miles per hour. Storms are going to be moving really quickly as they go through. So when you get those initial warnings, say you get an initial tornado warning, you probably want to act as quickly as possible today. Don't dilly-dally, just because I don't expect a lot of tornado warnings once again, but if you do happen to get one, it's a fast-moving thunderstorm. So you don't want to waste any time there. You want to start moving if that happens. Once again, don't expect a big tornado day. But if it happens, for that one spot, move fast. So here's one of the forecast models. And I'm going to start it here at, so we use Zulu time, so I have to reconvert it to our time. So this is showing 3 o'clock. And that's where we're starting to see initiation further off to the west. So here's like Hardeman County, Ford County, Knox County. Here's Wichita County, Wilbarger, Baylor, Throckmorton. So as that approaches, that's when we really see initiation further off to the west. Here's 4 o'clock. That's how quick the storms move. They crossed almost a county and a half in about an hour. And that's when we're really starting to see storms ramp up around 4 o'clock. And then by about 5 o'clock, they're pushing more into the, Wilbarger County. I mean, you see how quick those storms are moving. Really, they don't usually move that quickly. But now we're kind of getting into the second set of counties there, from Wilbarger up towards Jackson and Tillman, down towards Throckmorton and Baylor. And then by 6 o'clock, it's pushing into the central portion of Texoma. Now, the question is, especially as we get into the central portions of Texoma, when we have the storms reach us in like Wichita Falls area, we had those storms earlier today. And what happens when we have earlier storms is it takes away some of the instability, takes away some of the moisture, and it hurts storm chances and storm development further down the line. Now, can the atmosphere recover? Yes, absolutely it can. But really, we need to see the skies clear out a little bit, get a little extra heat down to the surface. So if that happens, if you start seeing sunny skies by, 3, 4 o'clock, expect a chance for some storms to roll through, especially. Now, it doesn't mean that storms won't roll through if you don't have it, but it's going to make it more difficult for them to strengthen as they approach. And that's the same story for the eastern portions of Texoma. As we get closer to the 7 o'clock hour, pushing off to the east, now 8 o'clock, and you really see those storms starting to move out. 9, 10, and what we got to watch for is the second layer of development. I mentioned the southeastern portions of Texoma having multiple chances for storms. This is 8, 9, 10, and watch what happens. 11, 12, and then 1 a.m. It finally pushes out to the east. Now that second set of storms is not going to be much of a tornado or hail threat, maybe a small hail threat, but the main threat will be with that second set of storms is the wind threat. When you start to see those lines congeal into a secondary line like that along a cold front, you start to worry about the wind gusts. And so it'll be a secondary threat for straight line winds in the southeastern portion of Texoma. So you might actually see 2 chances for storms today from Montague County through southern Clay into portions of Jack and Young. You probably have multiple chances for storms today. But I would say the chance to get the large hail or even a brief spin up is a little bit lower.